Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fawcett. Each week we interview experts in AI, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. In our show today, we look at enterprise AI. Not a surprise there. I guess we're talking AI. I'm joined by John Taschek, Chief Market Strategy Officer at Salesforce. John, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining. And, you know, we've been friends for a very long time. I think this will be a fun conversation. And as you know, I've talked to a lot of folks different times. I've done interviews with folks from Salesforce, but never had somebody at a level where we could kind of talk some broader topics and then also kind of look at some of the internal use cases. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. Just for the audience, can you do an introduction and then just tell us a little bit about what you do at Salesforce?
Well, I might be able to answer the first question and not the second, but I'll try.
Or even, what do people think you do?
That's a better question. I'm John Taschek. I work at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce coming up in July, 21 years. And I run something called market strategy. Market strategy, when I started, and I just kind of created a title, that made it seem like no one knew what I did, was competitive intelligence, and then influence, media, and analyst relations. Then we have a group of subject matter experts that basically feed on the street, listening to what our customers say, feed it back. And I work for David Schmeier in the product organization. And it's what a journey. So again, thanks for having me on the show, Mike.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I think we wanted to have this conversation for a while, and it's just finding the right sort of time we can sync up. But definitely appreciate it. I've talked to a lot of detail people about the product folks about different things you guys are doing with AI, and there's a lot. I mean, it's been a broad initiative for a while, and so I thought maybe it would be good to just kind of take a step back, and from your perspective, what's the higher level strategy around AI, generative AI, and then help us understand that a bit more. How does Salesforce think about AI and going forward, and then how kind of positioning yourself in the market with that?
Yeah, well, it's a great broad question. I can go in a lot of directions on this. So appreciate.
I set you up.
Well, just like going back to Salesforce, AI has been around for a long time, and even generative AI in concept form has been around since the 50s in science fiction and probably before that. But now it's much more real. And so I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a history of Salesforce. We went heavily invested into AI nearly 10 years ago with the launch of Einstein, largely based on predictive models and predictions. So something beyond what rules-based systems do. And it was always to augment the productivity of the teams that are working. So like a sales manager and also the customer to get a better customer experience and we are a CRM company. And then the solutions would, augment the user and make them able to, answer questions faster, get more insight, and prioritize their work. It was hugely successful, as you can see Salesforce's trajectory over the last decade or so, but also since inception. So generative AI, we had been working on generative AI and the foundational models that lead to it, in LLM research and prompt engineering, before November, about a year and a half ago, when ChatGPT was released into the wild. And that is a transformational moment in computing, because it basically took applications and allowed huge data sets, specifically for language and context and insight. Now, when you bring those two together in a CRM environment, you get such a broad array of data and insight that you can bring in, along with the data that you already have in your system. And so it is transformational for the industry the first reactions were denial, being afraid, and
Typical.
experiment. Yeah, right. It wasn't like death. It was much more. There was an experimentation, curiosity that came out of that has been, you know, groundbreaking for so many people. So our strategy now is uh, it's still the same strategy, but more. And so, including generative AI in a CRM environment that's much broader than CRM as it was defined even 10 years ago. CRM is anything that touches the customer.
Right.
And it's, since just a year and a half ago, we've been innovating like crazy on generative AI and how it can be used. At the same time, we realize there's a flaw in generative AI when it comes to customer experience. Well, there's many flaws, probably,
Uh,
but
At least one big one.
there's two big ones, and it depends on your lens which one is more important. One was trust.
Yeah.
You don't do you trust the answers? Are they hallucinating? Is it taken as fact? And then on the other side, well, if I'm asking a question in your CRM system that's specific to your company's knowledge base, that should be under non-disclosure, should never go out of the company's walls. What happens to that data or that questions when prompted at all? It goes out into the wild, and then no one knows where it is. So those two things we had to solve. And so before we launched a ton of the generative AI features that we have in the system, um, which we've been doing rapidly. If anyone goes to salesforce.com/news, you'll see, like, just even this week is our connections conference.
Yeah.
But we needed to create a trust layer. So we launched that June last year. And it is a huge differentiator for Salesforce, and it's necessary also for the industry.
Yeah. I mean, what you mentioned, the other thing in there that I think is interesting that that you hinted around is this idea of context, right? And so the trust layers is interesting from the trust side, but it's also interesting from the context side and the grounding the model side, right? To get better answers. So that, I mean, how does that, or is that differentiating? Is that something that you think that is unique? And then how, in general, is Salesforce kind of differentiating itself? Because all the enterprise vendors are making announcements, but why is Salesforce? Why have you guys taken the lead, and where do you think you differentiate?
There's several reasons. First, the first was we did launch Trust, which was set up so that for the one of the two reasons I mentioned. One was so that your own data doesn't get released into the wild, and it's untrackable.
Yay.
And the other part of the Trust when we first launched it was toxicity detection, making
Mm,
sure that it's not there. The removal of bias or the checks of bias. There's always a human in the loop, especially then.
yeah.
And so we had to have those types of trust layers put in. The differentiation, and it's a huge one, is that in when it comes to customer experience, what customers do experience, and how
Mhm.
employees react, you need data. Now, Salesforce
Mm,
has the the leading applications individually across the board: sales, service, marketing, commerce, so on, industries. We have a broad array of information. That information is the company's data. It's the crown jewels of the
right.
company. And but in addition, that data still needs to be augmented. So I think one of the greatest pioneering innovations that we have that is a huge differentiation is Data Cloud,
Yeah.
because it can bring in your own data from your Salesforce system or systems and data from outside of it, whether it's in Snowflake or Databricks or any, you know, you could a myriad of different sources, Redshift, BigQuery, all of
Yep.
them.
Yep.
You can bring that data in. And we also have the platform for connecting more legacy data and other systems with MuleSoft. So we have a
Yeah.
platform that creates a data foundation, which is going to be incredibly important for the industry, for customers. We have all the data already that's related to customers, as much data as the customer puts in. We have data cloud that connects to outside sources and creates a normalization and a fabric that ties in those sources. And then only then will generative AI actually work for you in a competitively differentiated way.
Sure.
Because we have generative AI that takes the data, your own LLMs outside, and rationalizes it. And then that data, when you're using generative AI, it teaches the data and you get better data. So better data feeds generative AI, and it's one of those virtual cycles that you can count on for differentiation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the data cloud piece, I feel like a lot of that people maybe didn't pay enough attention to that announcement, because it certainly, we talked about customer data platform CDPs for years, and you guys certainly started in that direction. But then somewhere over the last couple of years, it went to this broader definition that really does help the entire business be able to get more out of AI and generative AI by providing a bigger data foundation, and even federated data, so you don't always have to move it, right? I mean, if it's in Snowflake, you can use that data, but it doesn't have to move into your data cloud. So I think you're right. That's an exciting differentiator, and something that maybe doesn't get as much attention as perhaps it should.
You call that a good point, is that data does not have to always reside in Salesforce.
Yeah.
It could reside in different places. And because companies already have, especially larger companies, already have workflows and things for that data.
Yeah.
So why move it? That's definitely a competitive advantage we have. And, I'll take a note on what that message is going across. In the customers I talk to and the people I talk to, it does set a good foundation for a great conversation for sure.
Yeah.
That said, it's fairly new, and it's going to be, a huge business soon. It's the fastest growing business we have.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it really does make sense from I've talked about this for years, the data silo problem, and this is the first time I've really seen this coordinated method of bringing everything together in a way that does make it usable, and yet protects the security, the privacy of the data as well, which obviously is key here, right?
Yeah. We have 4 pillars, Mike. We have 4 pillars that we stand by. That data is first, CRM, AI, and trust. If you don't have the 4 pillars, you're going to have you might have a ton of innovation, but you're going to be out innovated by the companies that do have those 4 pillars.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That is a formula that would lead you there, and certainly makes sense from the kind of overview perspective of how do you make this effective. So one of the things, I mean, we can hear people talk about, oh, this is a complex thing. How do I approach it? That sort of thing. But how does Salesforce make this, AI, generative AI tools? How does it make it more accessible, transparent, both from the everyday user, which is obviously your the most important constituent there, but also from developers and even your partners? Like, is there a way that you guys have really helped people understand and simplify some of this and make it more transparent and accessible?
Oh, yeah, many ways. We have Salesforce Trailhead, which is there's going to be a lot of skilling necessary to use generative AI in the right way. There's also you can learn about it and learn Salesforce or generative AI. You can take courses, basically all free, and then over time you can get certified on those things, which is a great career path. So skilling is absolutely necessary. And then in the product itself, it's not like a separate side window where you're copying and pasting things. It's built into the system, so it is accessible, and a lot of it is transparent. You can see what we had done with Einstein in, just take Sales Cloud as an example, or field service. It's part of the system. You don't have to go from one place to the other to find it. It's not like launching ChatGPT in a side window and asking questions. It's in context with the customer. whoever you're talking to.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a great question. Um, but those are some of the
Yeah.
areas. There are many more
Yeah.
that we have.
I mean, to me, that's been an interesting sort of shift there with you guys really laying out, and it probably doesn't surprise me that this conversation started with the trust layer and kind of moves out from there, because that is one of the true differentiators, I think, and certainly a way to help customers deal with some of that complexity and fear around the use, the deployment of. Um, so how from you sort of started in this direction. So I kind of I want to jump here a little bit, because I one of the sort of legends or wives' tales or whatever we want to call them these days is that, oh, it's coming for your job, right? I mean, AI is going to replace you, and yet what I just heard you say is that you have developed systems to help people reskill and understand how to use this in their job and grow. So I mean, what would you say to people who are worried about AI replacing them? What is, how can they prepare themselves, prepare their employees to work more effectively with these new technologies? And I mean, you guys have experience doing that internally too, so maybe that helps understand that.
This may not be a Salesforce opinion, but my own. It's technologies generally are best served when they take repeatable tasks and make them easier. And a repeatable task can be anything from the constant filling out a form, and the same information's in each form. It could be anything that's repetitive.
Yep.
And developers over time have basically taken the most mundane tasks and try to make them easier. So if the mundane tasks are reduced, there could be an impact. But we're not seeing that. I don't believe it's really ever happened on a large scale. And if it did, like from the Industrial Revolution on, the workforce bounces back. They do reskill. Unemployment's still really low. When generative AI is now in its current form been out for over a year. So I think that there is reskilling. I keep hearing this thing that I heard a long time ago, but it's resurfacing, is that AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows AI is going to take your job.
Which is probably true. I mean,
yeah, but at the same time, you don't. The best technologies are the ones that aren't like separate. They're kind of built in.
Yeah.
And so, for generative AI to work best and to make a company most competitive and most productive, they'll just need to grasp the concepts of generative AI, and it needs to be seamless. The experience needs to be seamless for them.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that it's interesting, because I just got in an argument with a client recently about almost exactly that, and I ended up writing a blog post about it, as I often do when I get frustrated with something, and it's this idea that people think of their experience as a consumer with the AI, and then they try to apply that in business, but it's not the same tool that you would need to apply if you were embedding this in your business process. But they don't really, like, we haven't really talked about the fact that generative AI by itself is a consumer tool. I can bring it into workplace and do some things with it, even if it's not really approved. But when it comes to using it in the enterprise, you guys have embedded this in the process, in the software, and it has trust layer. It has all these other things. So it's almost like we're kind of missing the point of, it's not this consumer experience. It's better because it has this layer of trust and protection built in.
Well, that is absolutely true. With the trust layer and the consumers, you can imagine a consumer pulling a document from work and say this is a highly confidential document, and run it through Chat GPT and say, give me a summary of this. Well, where does that original document PDF go?
Yeah.
That said, enterprise has been learning from the consumer industry, and
Yeah.
vice versa for a
Yeah.
long time. I mean, the fun, the curiosity, the rabbit holes that you want to go down in order to be curious,
Yeah.
they have to come into the enterprise. What the enterprise does that's different than the consumer is has a whole bunch of flows and automations and process that is solved
Mm.
underneath the layers. So there are safety protocols that are beyond trust that are embedded in modern systems.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to think of it. I think that the modern system embedding and the tools. Maybe I use some of these consumer tools, but you have to educate your employees that you can't be uploading all your personal customer data into Chat GPT because that's not protected. It's outside of the protection that you'd get inside the enterprise. So that's
Yeah, and
interesting.
like a simple example of this is like in the enterprise, say you're a customer service agent, and do you want to just swipe right, swipe left to get rid of you don't want to deal with this one round? No, it's you can't work totally like that, but
Right.
you can make it a lot simpler and give you the ones that you should work on fastest,
Yeah.
and then you get more efficiencies and potentially more growth out of that.
Yeah, so it's a systematic approach. It's built into your process. It's a part of what you do as a part of your job. That's almost like, oh, this is Gen AI growing up. I mean, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and it's grown up fast.
It has grown up very fast. Let's be honest. So, yeah, I know you guys are using generative AI inside of Salesforce. I mean, you always use your own tools, but I'm curious, kind of how are you seeing your employees leverage this? And then, particularly around some of the things that you deal with regularly, like competitive intelligence or analyst relations, those kinds of things. I mean, are there use cases that you're seeing emerge for this already around some of those activities?
Oh, hundreds. For Salesforce, I'll just start with Slack. It's
Mm,
our main interface to all the automations that are it's powered by Salesforce.
right.
It's a conversational tool, but it's also a productivity tool. It does a lot of things, but it brings teams together. One of the things with Slack, especially a company like ours, is we have lots of messages, and right now Slack AI is used to power things like recap. Well, what happened in the your most interesting and most followed channels?
Mm,
We've launched Slack Elevate for sales. We've done so much with Slack, and we use it. In addition, there's catch up in Slack. There's summaries. There's things to ask, questions in the AI, like something that might come from our concierge, which is our IT service desk.
mm.
Um, Again, it's almost seamless, and you don't have to say, "Oh, I'm going to do generative AI to do this." It's just built in.
Right.
And then, in addition, we use the technology that is Data Cloud, starting with CDP. That's kind of one of the pillars of our
Yeah.
Data Cloud is the CDP like functions, and broadening that out across all the data sets in Salesforce. So we use that. We use that to give our customers, event attendees, better experiences.
Mm.
That's just a couple. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's all over.
Yeah, I mean that again that makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of tools you've built in, from Copilot all the way down to predictions and prescriptive sort of actions and that
Oh,
sort of thing. That I'm
predictions. Yeah, we've talked about that for so long.
Mhm.
When Mark Benioff, uh, the co-founder of and CEO of Salesforce, started using Einstein predictions for our own internal forecast. It had its own seat at the table. Okay,
Yeah.
ask each of the chief revenue officers, and okay, Einstein, what's your
That's interesting. I'd like to be in that meeting. Fly
yeah.
on the wall, not actually a participant, but
Yeah, now it's not just with
that's cool.
it's in a broader array. Here's what a forecast is.
Yeah.
Just getting our own forecast and insight helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, you bring up something else that I think is interesting, and And we saw this when you and I were at the Tableau conference recently, too. Some more examples of this, but one of the changes that seems like generative AI is creating is more of a natural way to interact with systems because you can ask questions, and I mean of data particularly, but I guess across all sorts of different, just like your example with Mark and the forecast, right? I mean, I can ask questions in a natural way and get an answer back instead of the old sort of search paradigm of I get a way to find an answer, which is maybe or maybe not useful. I don't know, but
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I agree. And, at the Tableau conference, we launched Pulse, which is AI capabilities built into Tableau for visualization, but also actions.
yeah,
And it's, we're having an event right now. I think it's today, the actual day of the event. It's Connections. Connections is an event that originally focused on marketing and commerce and still heavily focused there. But we just launched commerce, we just launched marketing and generative AI capabilities in each of those.
nice.
The innovation is constant.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I mean, it seems like that whole interaction paradigm was pretty exciting to watch them be able to just talk to the data and be able to get that out and democratize it a bit more. So that seems like a really cool use case. So how internally are you doing things to reskill employees as well? I mean, I know you have all the training that was developed. I mean, but is that something you encourage internally, or how does that work for employees?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the employees are required to take the Trailblazer coursework and
Hmm,
then and become rangers. Rangers is one of
Rangers,
the
that's
yeah, one of the there's national park theme to Trailhead, and so we have rangers. So in that there's generative AI. We also get certifications, for um, the messaging. We have our product marketing organization helps the enablement team with knowledge, but also skills to take advantage of it. But for the most part, it's using it. You have to use it internally, then you learn quite a bit what works, what doesn't,
Makes sense.
and that is more of a seamless experience inside of Salesforce.
Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. The more you use it, the more you can be fluent with it and talk about it and that sort of thing. So that's logical. Now, I know also because of the fact that is a lot of touch point with customers in general built into the system. I mean, is that are you seeing more and more use of this across your customer journeys? Are they interacting more with the chatbots and that sort of thing in the system? Is that something that you guys have deployed already?
Oh, absolutely. We have tons of customers using it. Tons is a kind of a colloquial thing, but
That's it's
I'm
bigger
sure
than
there.
bread box
Sure, if you
and
weighed
mail.
all the customers, there would be tons of them.
Exactly.
But,
Well, yeah, probably. So, excuse me. The the big pushback still kind of continues. I mean, you've got early adopter customers that are really jumped into this, but you also have some fast followers and some laggards, and so what advice you have for them? I mean, what if you're hesitant, you're unsure about this, about incorporating AI, generative AI into your business, what advice? I mean, what do they do?
well, it's interesting. And 1 year ago at this same Connections conference in Chicago, I sat at a customer table and led something about generative AI. The topic was generative AI. And these are large companies, um, typically customers, and they were afraid. They wanted to shut it down.
Yeah.
The question was, should we shut it down, like block, all access to it, or
Mhm.
what do we do? And and you don't want to do that, but
Mhm.
you want to have it in a more controlled environment. This is last year. A lot's
Yeah.
changed in the year, and I think that there's a if you look at the kind of the if you look at it on in a range, customers like the leading edge customers, and then the fast followers, and the cautious adopters. The ones that don't feel like they need to change much because of inertia. That sometimes is a multi-year range from the time that emerging companies adopt something to the time the slowest ones do. Well, that range is very compressed now. So, it's in 1 year, it's a complete reversal. I think that it's such a short, time frame that everyone is experimenting with it. Even companies that wouldn't have been emerging tech vendors are using it. It could be railroad systems that are using generative AI in some capacity, airlines, which are both emerging tech and, they have to be very cautious. It's, heavily regulated. Are using it for flight scheduling, just from the consumer point of view. Just so much more is happening there. And I think that, you have to go with a partner and a vendor partner, and probably a partner who specializes in this, and a vendor that you trust, and then experiment with it, because it's going to give, there's always an initial shock. How do you deploy it? How much does it cost? But you have to at least try it. And if you don't, you might be disrupted in your own industry.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, jump in is the right way to to go here. And if you're not, you could easily get left behind.
Yeah, but you have to do it with a trusted partner, someone that started foundationally with trust. There's the education involved too, and that's part of the skilling.
Yeah, no, that's great. John, that's really helpful, and the whole conversation really different to look at kind of Salesforce in a broader lens, which I think was really fun. One of the things, though, before I end this and let you go, one of the things I always ask is, can you recommend somebody, an author, a thought leader, somebody that you think would be great for the audience to follow, to check out, to read, to learn more about AI and business, generative AI, that sort of thing?
Well, my favorite, if there's somebody followed on X/Twitter, Vala Afshar just came out with a book. I would follow Vala, not just because of tech, but because he has a great humanitarian view of the world, and is uplifting at the same time. His symbols at Vala Afshar, AFSHAR. Maybe another person would be Marty Kine. Now, both of them are on my team, but of course, there's lots of other people out there.
But I mean, they are thought leaders that's the point of it, right? So,
Marty is an author. He's had history in the entertainment industry, the ad agencies, and he specializes in data and AI. It would be a good one. Yeah, Kine is Kihn, so Marty Kine. And then I would always follow Salesforce Research, because there's just a ton of, I don't want to, promote our own company over the toply, but it's this research team pioneered things like prompt engineering and development of LLMs in the enterprise software industry.
Yeah, three great recommendations. And I've known Vala for years, and he is one of the most prolific Xers. Is Xer the right way to say that now?
I guess so.
Xers.
And he doesn't use genAI to do it. Well, I don't know.
No,
I mean, he does know.
Well, I mean, he's been doing it for years. So, 10 years ago, I knew him too, and he was still that prolific. So it wasn't then. So
yeah, exactly.
But maybe he is. I mean, I don't know. Cool. John, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate you joining today. So thank you a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And, thanks for having me on the show. It's 7 a.m. here when it started, but I feel wide awake and energized, as like I always do.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining. Remember to hit that subscribe button. And for more on AI and other software research reports and posts, check out the arionresearch.com/blog and /research reports. And don't forget to join us next week. I'm Michael Fawcett, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.